Chocolate Touch. Chapter 5. John hung up his coat, got his notebook and pencil out of his locker, and sat down at his small table just in time for the second bell, when Miss Plimsoll walked silently in the classroom. As soon as she appeared in the doorway, all the chattering and scuffling stopped. The 20 boys and girls sat straight in their chairs and looked straight at the clean blackboard. "Good morning, children," Miss Plimsoll said. "Good morning, Miss Plimsoll," the class answered respectfully. Miss Plimsoll sat at her high desk, blinking her eyes as she surveyed the room. Then she opened a little drawer in her desk and pulled out a spectacle case, from which she took her reading glasses. She removed her long-distance glasses, put on her short-distance glasses, snapped shut the spectacles case, replaced it in the drawer, shut the drawer, tilted her head forward so she could look over the glasses on her nose, and said, "This morning, children, we are going to have an important test." There were some groans and a few oohs and some ahs. Miss Plimsoll lifted up one of her hands and silence was restored instantly. "No complaining, please," she said sternly. "This test will show me how well you have been learning your arithmetic this year. It will be a short one. I am going to write just 4 problems on the board. I shall expect you to solve them all swiftly and accurately and to write your answers neatly. You will place your paper in front of you now. You will write your name at the top right-hand corner, and then you will place your pencil beside your paper, sit back in your chair, and wait until I give you the signal to begin work." Miss Plimsoll turned to the blackboard and began chalking up the test problems. Tests always made John nervous. Besides, his lips were feeling dry, and the taste of chocolate was strong in his mouth. He raised his hand. "Yes, John?" Miss Plimsoll asked. "Please, may I go and get a drink of water, please, Miss Plimsoll?" he said in a small voice. "Very well. Hurry back. We're going to start in a few minutes." John gratefully slipped out of the room and walked quickly down the quiet corridor to a water fountain. His tongue felt thick with chocolate. The cold water would be refreshing. He pressed his foot down on the fountain treadle, and a stream of clear, ice-cold water spurted up from the silver nozzle in the white enamel basin. He lowered his head until the jet of water reached his lips. The cold water splashed delightfully against the outside of his mouth. He opened his lips. As soon as the water gushed in, it turned into ice-cold chocolate water, thin and sweet. Quickly stopping the flow, John looked with dismay at the shallow puddle that had formed and was now draining away in the basin of the fountain. He hurried to another fountain on the second floor of the building, but there the same thing happened. The clear ice-cold water turned to liquid chocolate in his mouth. When John finally got back to his classroom, all the other pupils were bent over their tables, busily scratching away. Miss Plimsoll looked up from her book as John tiptoed in. She looked at the clock on the wall, looked back at him, and wagged her finger at him reprovingly. John began on the first of the 4 problems, but he was so worried about the chocolate water that he couldn't keep his mind on his work. By the time he was ready to start the 4th problem, the other boys and girls were already putting down their pencils and straightening up and smiling at each other. "2 minutes to go," said Miss Plimsoll. Concentrating hard, John took the end of his pencil between his teeth and began to nibble it. It immediately turned to chocolate. Then he noticed an even more disturbing change. Although he had taken the pencil out of his mouth as soon as the first piece of chocolate had crumbled off, the pencil was continuing to change to chocolate. The chocolate was slowly but steadily moving down the pencil, replacing the wood and the lead inside, changing it into a chocolate pencil before John's very eyes. The magic, for John now knew that his power must be magic, was apparently getting stronger. By the time the whole pencil had changed from red, yellow, and black to dark brown, Miss Plimsoll was announcing that only few seconds remained in which to write down the final answer. "Just a minute," John pleaded. "Shh!" Miss Plimsoll cautioned him, holding a finger up to her mouth. Shh! chorused the slow workers, who were becoming almost as excited as John. But John felt worst of all. He felt sure that he could finish the problem and write down the correct answer if only he had something to write with. But Miss Plimsoll, he begged in a loud whisper, my pencil's turned to chocolate. Hush, John, Miss Plimsoll said. I'll speak to you after the bell. John tried to write with his changed pencil, but the point was too soft, and he only succeeded in making a chocolate smear where he should have written 72. Chapter 6. When the others had been excused to go out for the mid-morning play, John had to go and stand by Miss Plimsoll's desk. John, said Miss Plimsoll, you mustn't make up silly stories to excuse your failures. I must have the truth. What did you do with your pencil? This is it, John said, showing Miss Plimsoll the pointed stick of chocolate. Really, it is. It changed. What do you mean it changed? Miss Plimsoll demanded. That's my pencil, John tried to explain, only it isn't the same anymore. Nothing stays the same today if I put it into my mouth. The same thing happened when I chewed my gloves. They were chocolate, too. John, said Miss Plimsoll slowly, do you feel all right? Yes, thank you, John said. I feel all right, except, he added, I'm getting so thirsty. The water from the drinking fountain turned to chocolate, and so did the water upstairs. I would like a drink of cold water. Yes, John, said Miss Plimsoll. She suddenly looked pale. You run out and play with the others. I'm going to have a talk with the nurse. And John, Miss Plimsoll said as he started toward the classroom door, here's another pencil. Be a good boy and try not to lose it. I'm afraid I'll have to keep this piece of chocolate until school's out. You know we don't allow anyone to eat candy in class. Miss Plimsoll put the slightly chewed chocolate pencil in her desk drawer, and John went out to look for Susan. He found her skipping rope with two other girls in his class. John usually scorned skipping rope. He preferred hide and seek, tag, FBI, and spies, kick the can, or any other good, exciting game. Jumping up and down in one place just to avoid being hit by a rope seemed silly to him, but he was sorry for having spoiled Susan's silver dollar, and he was willing to make a sacrifice. Susan, he said. Susan continued to bounce on one foot as her two friends swung the rope over and under, over and under, over and under her. She didn't seem to notice John. I'll skip with you, he offered. Susan stopped, and the rope was caught by her shins. Let's try doubles backwards, she said, but not to John. She ignored John. You go first, Betty. Ellen, you go second. I'll go last. The one who does it the most times gets the first slice of my birthday cake. Susan looked at John, raised her eyebrows, shut her eyes, and stuck out the tip of her pink tongue. Then she turned back to the girls and smiled. Ellen whispered in Betty's ear, and Betty whispered in Susan's ear. Then all three of them looked at John and at each other and burst out laughing. Oh, Susan, John protested. I didn't mean to do it. The trouble is there's something magic about me today. Everything I put into my mouth turns to chocolate. The girls giggled. You wouldn't like it, said John, who was beginning to feel sorrier for himself than he had ever felt before. I think it's getting worse, he said reproachfully. At first, just the part in my mouth turned to chocolate, but when I nibbled at the end of my pencil, the whole thing changed. Pooh, Susan said. The others hooted with glee. Maybe I'll get sick and die, John warned. Maybe I'll turn to chocolate myself. Then you'll be sorry. I don't believe one word about the chocolate, Susan said. And if it was true, you'd be glad, because all you're ever eating is chocolate. If you don't believe me, John retorted, Just give me that skipping rope and I'll prove it. The girls looked questioningly at each other for an instant, but as they hesitated, the bell rang and it was time to go back to the classroom. The rest of the morning passed slowly for John. He was afraid that his mother was going to be cross about the missing gloves. She might not accept the excuse that he had eaten them. He regretted his messed up arithmetic test. He was sad about Susan's anger and disbelief, and he was getting terribly thirsty. Once during geography and once during art, he was excused to get a drink of water. But both times, however, he swallowed nothing but sweet chocolate. His mouth was getting stickier and sweeter and drier by the minute. Chapter 7. All right, boys and girls, Miss Plimsoll said, it is almost time for lunch. Clear up your things. Paint pots securely closed. Brushes washed. Paintings unpinned and laid out to dry. Drawing board stacked against the wall. Ah, there's the bell. Front row first, Timothy leading, then Robin in single file. Go! John, alone, walked slowly in the throng, hurrying along the corridors to the school cafeteria. The school was proud of the cafeteria and the food served in it. The room was spacious and bright, with windows all the way along one side overlooking the playground and the playing fields beyond. The opposite side was wholly taken up by the shiny silver service counter. Several boys and girls were already settled at tables by the time John took his place in the line. Enviously, John noticed a boy at the nearby table suck at straws dipped in a milk bottle that was dull with frost. John could imagine the refreshing taste of cold, creamy milk. At another table, a group of girls were eating fat red cherries. John could almost feel the firm fruit on his tongue and the pleasure of biting through the tart, juicy pulp. The cherries must taste good. They must be thirst quenching. John unhappily took a tray from the pile and slid it along the rails in front of the top of the counter. He put a paper napkin, a glass, and a gleaming spoon, a knife and fork on the tray. It seemed hardly worth the while, but he felt that he might as well try the food and drink. Perhaps if I eat a different way, without letting anything touch my lips, he muttered, my lunch won't change all to chocolate. He was not very hopeful. What? Asked the boy standing next to him. Nothing, John said. I thought I heard you say something about chocolate, the boy said. I hope this is the day for chocolate cream pie, he added. That'd be super. On chocolate cream pie days of the past, John had been known to skip the main course so that he might spend all his lunch money on dessert. The thought of 4 pieces of chocolate cream pie now suddenly made his stomach feel as though he were on a roller coaster, an uneasy, flibberty-gibberty sensation. John shuddered. Oogie, he commented, wrinkling up his nose. The other boy shrugged his shoulders and started to choose his meal. John took a plate of cold chicken and ham, potato chips, and a crisp, moist lettuce and tomato salad. The white of the chicken, the pink of the ham, the gold of the potatoes, the pale green of the lettuce, and the red of the tomato looked delicious. He also took half a pint of milk, a thick crusted whole wheat roll, and a cool pat of butter, a tumbler of water with ice cubes clinking against the glass, and a dish of fresh fruit, slices of orange and grapefruit and banana and grapes. John's tray was loaded with just the sort of meal his mother was always trying to persuade him to eat. Until today, John had always thought it was pretty dull to eat sensible things when there were sweeter food and drink to be had. Today, however, the sensible things looked most appetizing, and his mouth began to water in a new sticky way. John paid for the lunch with the money his mother had given him, went to an empty table, and sat down. His fingers trembling slightly with eagerness, he cut a slice of lettuce. His fork went through the leaves with a promising crunch. He stuck the prongs of the fork into a mouth-sized piece of lettuce and carefully inserted it into his mouth. The lettuce didn't touch his wet, stretched lips. John's teeth came together in crisp layers of sweet chocolate. He took a small piece of potato chip tilted back his head until he was looking straight up at the ceiling, and dropped the morsel straight down into his throat. He felt it go down, a sharp fragment of sweet chocolate. He tried the milk, the ice water, the fruit. Every solid and liquid that he sampled was transformed as soon as it entered his mouth. Then he became aware of a shocking novelty that he hadn't noticed at breakfast. At the rim of each glass there was a small semicircle of opaque brown. The bowl of his spoon and the prongs of his fork had become brown. As John watched horrified, the areas of magic chocolate slowly spread until at last the glasses and cutlery were all solid chocolate. The trouble was unquestionably growing worse. John's scalp tightened with fear. "What am I going to do?" he asked himself miserably. Oh dear, what is going to happen to me?" Leaving his tray of chocolate food and drink and utensils, John stumbled away from the cafeteria and out to the playground.